I think we are ready. Almost 40 people in the room. So let's begin with the third online conference titled International Accreditation. Before starting, I will proceed with reading the following legal notice. In application of the General Data Protection Regulation, we inform all users about the conditions of use of the video conferencing application. First, this conference will be recorded with the intention of providing participants with all of its contents afterwards and for the project dissemination purposes. Capturing and/or recording this session is strictly prohibited, as well as its reproduction or diffusion, as a part or as a whole, by whichever means or devices used. Any improper action will lead to a violation of current regulations, and the pertinent legal responsibilities may be derived. Welcome everyone to the third online conference of ANTENA. As I mentioned before, the name of this conference is International Accreditation. Dr. Roberto Escarré, International Project Director of the University of Alicante, will officially welcome the event and introduce today's speaker, Dr. Christophe TERRASSE from EFMD. So without further delays, Roberto, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Gabriela. Well, welcome everybody to this third online conference. As you have seen in the agenda, the main idea of this conference is to present a landscape of the international quality assurance accreditations and other quality assurance mechanisms such as certifications and rankings. Okay, so we will work on describing these characteristics and objectives of each mechanism, discuss the pros and cons, and advise on the precautions and methodologies to be observed when engaging in international quality recognition mechanisms. As you know, also the speaker will be our colleague Christophe TERRASSE. I don't know if I need to introduce Christophe because you know him very well, but let me just say some words that you have also in the agenda. Christophe is the director of the International Projects Department at EFMD. He has led numerous large-scale international projects in the field of quality assurance and accreditation, and has participated in various accreditation visits of higher education institutions. So Christophe knows theory and the practice, okay, and also in the field, in the framework of international projects, what is, I think, very useful for us. EFMD is a global, non-profit, membership-driven organization dedicated to management development, with almost 1,000 members in 90 countries. It is internationally recognized as an accreditation body for business school programs, and corporate universities. And in addition, it manages a wide portfolio of institutional and program accreditations and quality assurance mechanisms. So I think that's basically what I wanted to say. As you know, we have the conference that will last for about 1 hour, a little bit less, okay? Then we will have a session with questions and answers that will be managed by Gabriela, and of course, the answers will be coming from Christophe, and a conference closing at the end of the session. So again, welcome everybody, and Christophe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Roberto, and welcome to this conference. Good afternoon to you all who are joining from the Philippines. I'm delighted to be with you, to share with you what we know and what we do in our everyday life about accreditation. I will now share my presentation. I did it before, so it's the guarantee that it will not work this time, as usual. So let's see Yeah, it seems that it is working. So it seems that we are starting with a lucky day and finishing with a lucky day in the Philippines. So as Roberto told you, I mean, very briefly introduced, we are a network. We are a network, a big international global network active in the whole world with something like 1,000 members, which are essentially business schools and universities in management education. So we are a specialist of quality and accreditation of in management education, but you will see that most of what I am exposing to you based on our experience in management education can be translated to other fields of higher education. As Roberto also said, EFMD is managing quality assurance system, accreditation, but also very active in international projects. And here I'm very proud because we have a portfolio of running project at the moment. I think it's nice to say that many, or some at least, of these projects we do in cooperation with University of Alicante. So it is great to be with you and great to be with Alicante as well. If we focus on accreditation this time, we have two expertise in accreditation. The first one is in-house, if you want. It is what EFMD quality services do, basically running some accreditations and running some quality assurance systems. We are one of the three globally accrediting bodies for management education in the world. There are many more, but we are one of the three, which is internationally recognized as one of the top three. We have institutional accreditations, program accreditation, corporate learning. I will go into more details afterwards. We also have some specific quality assurance that does not lead to an accreditation, meaning that you don't have an award at the end. And the second part is that based on all this experience, we put all this expertise at the disposal of international partners for making some capacity buildings. I mean, in some regions who do not have their own accreditation system, we do cooperate with them to build specific customized quality assurance system. And we also contribute to developing new quality assurance system, new accreditation schemes in specific areas such as online inclusive education. You know that online education is a very hot topic now. The thing is that it needs also to be online. We are active in impact measurement, impact assessment, which are also quality assurance systems, and we have developed some specific accreditation this time for engineering education, entrepreneurship education, or vocational training. Here, again, building on the expertise that we have from EFMD Quality Services, which is running our accreditation. When we look at the different accreditations that we have, and I mean the main ones, here we have 200 schools, and the numbers are important. Look at EQUIS, which is the institutional accreditation. It's 200 schools in the world who got it. That you need to compare with 1,000 members. So it gives you immediately the feeling and the information that accreditation, as we mean it, is not for everybody. Accreditation is a distinction, and this is not something that every university has or even need to have. And this is important for the rest of the presentation, and that we will insist on. Sorry. In terms of when we prepared, my colleagues and myself, and I thank my colleagues for all the preparation that they did, when we prepared this session, we thought about what we wanted to share with you. And first of all, we know that we all know something about accreditation. In our institution, we are speaking about accreditation all the time, most of the time, but sometimes we realize that we don't exactly know what it covers. I mean, can be accreditation, can be quality assurance, could be certification, could be rankings, and so on and so on. So we wanted first, in the first part of my presentation, to clarify what is what. We wanted also to share our experience and to give you some practical tools and recommendations, because now we are used to supporting the universities, supporting our members when they go into quality assurance, when they go into accreditation. And also, when preparing this presentation, we kept in mind that accreditation is a very powerful booster for internationalization. So I try to orientate my presentation on the links between internationalization strategy and international accreditation, how one builds on the other, how one supports the other and help the university to be more international. So just like in any restaurant, we have a menu, which is basically what I told you. We'll have a first clarification, then we'll dive deeply into international accreditation. Why do you need to accreditate, and why doesn't you need to accreditate? Again, this is a choice. For whom is it good? What can you expect from the accreditation? And also, how does it work for you and for us as an accreditation agency? And then, as in any restaurant, we have the special of the day, and the special of the day will be, as I told you, what are the links between international accreditation and international strategy, internationalization strategy of your institution. So let's start with the what is what, and let's start by the first, type of accreditation related, quote unquote, type of instruments. And this one, which are the most, maybe not the most important, but the compulsory one, are the visa and certifications. In other words, the green light that the governments, the regulatory body, give the institution to get the right of exerting their work, which is delivering higher education. So it can go either at the institutional level, the government, the national agency grants the right to an organization to deliver some diploma and recognizing the diploma. Generally speaking, we see that they are national in scope. I mean, if you're based in France, it will be delivered by the French Ministry of Higher Education. If you're based in the Philippines, it will be delivered by the regulatory bodies of the Philippines. What we see also, and this is important to note, that basically, in many of the cases, they impose minimal requirements. For example, if you want to have the right to call yourself a university, if you want to have the right to deliver official diploma, well, you need to have at least this number of teacher. You need to have at least this degree of qualification, and so on and so on. These are minimal thresholds, and this is important because this is a very big difference with the accreditation. What we see also, that as everything, this is not a secret, this is not the case only in France, only in Europe, or only in the Philippines, everything which is imposed by the state has a small perfume, a small flavor of administration. And we all know that administration means procedures, administrative checks, and so on and so on. So generally speaking, it is kind of very heavy, very procedural, and very quantitative compliance check. Basically, you tick some boxes and you ensure that you ticked all the boxes to have the right of calling yourself a university and delivering some diploma. And just like in any government, sometimes takes a little bit longer than expected to react. The market or the students' demands are evolving, the faculty demands are evolving, the university demands are evolving for creating new diplomas, new trainings, and so on. But always there is a latency, there is an inertia from the state, and it sometimes takes longer to adapt. At the other hand, it's extremely important that we have this visa and certification, because it is extremely important that there is a quality control and minimum quality control for anybody who wants to enter into higher education. The important thing as well is that it is the same rules that apply in all the states, and it is essential to guarantee minimal quality standards. Then we have another type of family of instruments which are connected to quality. This is all what we call the assessments. And generally speaking, the assessments, they are evaluation systems that do not lead to a formal award. So you're not really accredited, but you applied in your institution a quality assurance tool to improve. For example, you decided that you wanted to improve the impact of your institution, and then you will go into an impact assessment, and as a result you will say, well, we went through an impact assessment, we're a good institution. So it's on the verge of the accreditation, but it's not a real accreditation. You find that in many cases, just like online learning, there are lots of assessments. Language training is also traditionally a domain of higher education where you have lots of assessments. You have also newer things just like inclusivity and so on and so on. And then we go to what we call as an accreditation agency, an accreditation. An accreditation for us, and this is our position as EFMD, as regulatory body, independent regulatory body, it is a quality label. It can be national, could be regional, you have some Asian quality label, for example, could be international, global, just like the one of EFMD. What is different compared to the national certification is that it's not given only by an official body, just like a ministry, it is given by peers, meaning that it will be the profession that evaluates you. In management education, typically the domain of the FMD, the accreditation is given by peers, meaning that in the commissions, in the awarding bodies, you have other deans. It's not representative from the ministry, it's representative from other schools. So this is what we call peer accreditation, and this is an essential difference with the certification. Also, you may have global accreditation for all higher education. You may have some more specific accreditation, just like everybody else. And also, we will see that in details. You have two big types of family. Either you look at the institutional accreditation, you will accreditate the full university, or you dip at the micro level and you look program by program. Or you can even mix both, and so on. What is important that remember the number that I was giving you at first in my presentation, that accreditation is not compulsory, and you don't have all the university who have the accreditation. At the contrary, if you want to be an university, you need to be certified by the state. So this is also a big difference with the accreditation. Now, another thing that I wanted to specify is what is the difference between institutional and program accreditation. Well, basically just like a house, if you want. The institutional accreditation, we will verify, we will check that the conditions in the institution are met to deliver quality higher education. So basically we are checking, we are verifying the solidity of the pillars of the system. Just like looking at a house, you check that it has a roof, you check that the walls are solid, you check that you have doors, that you have windows and so on, so that you have ventilation, and you check the house in itself. While in the program, you dive down into the program itself, and compared with the house, it means that you will look at the rooms itself, not the house. You say the house is good enough, but you look at the decoration of the room, the furniture in the room, the way, if they are comfortable, not comfortable. And there is a difference of focus, which is important to understand. Here you have an example of institutional accreditation. This is the example of EQUIS that we use in management education, but here again, you see that these big dimensions can be extrapolated to any other type of higher education. And you see that we are checking mostly the mission of the university. We look at the mission, what it wants to be, and we check that all the dimensions, student recruitment, quality of programs, faculty, number and qualification, research and development, and so on, are adequate and allow the institution to reach its mission. So if the institution tells us, well, we want to be number one in our part of the world, well, we will look that you have the number one faculty, that you have the number one programs, that you have sufficient research and development to fulfill your mission. So this is what we call mission-driven accreditation, and this is, again, a fundamental characteristic of institutional accreditation. And here we have what happens for program accreditation, and you see that it's very different. This time we focus obviously on the program, and we have very much an approach of input, process, output, and we check that the program in itself is correctly designed, that it's correctly delivered, and that it gives good outcomes. And we check that there are some structure which ensures the quality of the system. But again, we are not checking it at the level of the institution, we are checking it. It is a very tiny, minute, precise check at the level of the program. So this is the big difference. One, you look at the house, the other one, you look at each room in the house. Which are the objectives of accreditation? Well, the first one is market transparency and clarification. And this is important in management. This is important in any type of higher education. So this transparency is, well, when you're a student, when you are a family paying for your children's education, when you are a company buying some services of higher education, well, you don't have all the characteristics, all the abilities to judge of the quality, so you will trust an independent accreditation that say, well, this has been checked and you can, this is a good school. This is also an objective of accreditation. It is also, and we will deep down into that, helping the schools to develop international networks. Again, you arrive in a country, you don't really know who is good, who is bad, who is not so good. So you will trust the accreditation to say, well, this partner received an accreditation, so it must be, I trust it to be a good partner. But also, this first paragraph, transparency and clarification, is for the external market. For the internal activities, an accreditation is a quality improvement tool. And this is fundamental. You don't use accreditation just because you want to start, just you want a logo on your diploma. You do it as part of a long-term quality improvement tools, evaluating where you stand, comparing yourself with the competitors, with the professions, and establishing a progress plan. What I want to say as well, that accreditation are not mutually exclusive. You can have many different accreditation because each accreditation will focus on one particular aspect, meaning that every time they give you one perspective to improve, they give you one type of advice to improve, and basically you always gain something from getting another accreditation. And then, of course, in the profession, we have the rankings, and everybody is obsessed by the rankings. And the rankings, of course, you cannot avoid them, I mean, because they are easy to access. You have any newspaper, they're running ranking all the days. But they are extremely dangerous as well, because first of all, they can be easily manipulated, and we know how. There is a definite lack of transparency. I mean, we don't know who is behind. I mean, we know it's done by journalists. It's not done by specialists. I mean, everybody can, there is a difference in terms of capacities between one journalist which is making a ranking, and one dean or one senior official from a ministry, which has been living all his life in higher education and who know the trade. So mine, ranking, they're compulsory. Everybody wants to be ranked because the students look at it, the parents look at it, the faculty look at it, the state look at it, everybody look at it, but mine, because we don't know what's inside a ranking, and there is, in many cases, a methodological bias. So this is an internal flow, and you understand that, of course, from my discourse, I don't like much rankings, but this is something that we need to take into account. And there is an external flow in the ranking, meaning that people do not know how to interpret them. And in many cases, if you're number 10, well, they will assume that you are much better than number 12, and that you are 2 times better than number 20, 3 times better than number 30, which is not obviously the case. So mine, not only you don't know what's inside the ranking, but in many cases, there are some difficulties into interpreting the ranking. So this is a powerful tool, very visible, but you need to be very, very careful when analyzing it. So to summarize, this will be the end of my first part. 3 levels of quality accreditation certification: governmental, minimal quality, accreditation, which recognizes excellence, which is a word that I will use quite a lot in the second part of my presentation, and the rankings, which might be dangerous and we need to use with precautions. And you see how they relate together. You have a kind of progression from the minimum quality requirement given awarded by the national certification, generally by the Ministry of Education, the excellence, which are the national or the international accreditation, that in turn will feed the rankings and the benchmark. So you see that all in all, everything is linked. Third thing, you use international accreditation for internal reasons. And the internal reasons, as you rightly pointed out, it is to improve the quality of the institutions and the programs. And it is done, of course, through the benchmarking, the peer reviewing, the peer evaluation that you receive from the accreditation. Another extremely important aspect is that you use the accreditation as a driver for change, and you use it to accelerate the change in your institution. It's a way of setting a cape. It's a way of setting a direction. And it's also a way of motivating the people inside and say, we want to change. This is where we want to go. This is the level of quality that we want to attain. And these are the different steps. And of course, it's a way of engaging the stakeholders. These are essentially the internal reason. Now, you also have some external reasons. I mean, you go into accreditation, one of them, it's obvious, it's because it's compulsory, or almost compulsory, because every one of the institutions, every one of your competitors, every one of your fellow institutions is doing it. So at some point, you have no other choice but starting to go into accreditation because you have a pressure of the peers for you to be accredited. It's essential also, and this is what Cheryl was saying, for the visibility of the institution, for its differentiation. So it's for communication, for branding purpose, and it is used as a support of internationalization. It is true that accreditation is a kind of visa on your passport. When you go abroad, when you receive people from abroad, I mean, you are accredited, means that you have recognized standards of quality and recognized value. And there is a third one, which is not to be overlooked, which is the financial aspect. You use accreditation first to request additional resources from the stakeholders, from the board, and so on. You say, well, we want to improve, we want to get this label of quality, but these needs resources, this requires resources, and this is a way of getting more financing from the institution and the board. And in Europe, at least, but it's the case in many regions of the world, we see that as soon as an institution is accredited, it increases its tuition fees, it justifies the tuition fees because it's recognized as an excellent institution. So international students are more willing to pay higher tuition fees, and we know that at least in Europe, international students are a powerful way of financing the institution. So keep in mind 3 types, which is basically what you had in the chat. 3 types: internal reasons, improving quality; external reason, doing some, getting some more resources, getting some more visibility; and financial reasons. So now, how does it work? Well, you see that in any, this is the example of EFMD once more, but this is transferable to any other type of agency. You have 3 essential aspects into an accreditation body: the board, which define the criteria and the standards; the peer review teams, which are the guys that go into your institution to discuss with you and to check the level of quality of your institution, to audit your institution, in other words; and the awarding body. What is important to realize that there are 3 different institutions. It's not the people who go to your institution that will deliver you the label, and this is important to realize, just to avoid any compromission. So how does it work in more details? you decide to go into accreditation, you make some inquiries, you have a briefing visit. This is essential for transparency. They will explain the why, they will explain the journey, they will explain the conditions, they, meaning the accreditation agency. Then it will be decided whether you're eligible or not. Sometimes they say, well, we think it's a little bit too early, or we think you're not quite ready, or maybe you do not really fit with the standards, so you're not eligible to an accreditation. And then here you have a big chunk, which is called the self-assessment report, which is what your institution will have to do. It's basically how you assess yourself against the criteria of the institution. When it's ready, and it can take anything from 6 months to 2 years, then there is a peer review visit, the people I was mentioning before. These people will check the report, will discuss with you, and they will make a recommendation for accreditation or not accreditation to the awarding body. So you see, it's not the same people, just to avoid that there are any corruption, any problems, anything like that. And then the awarding body will decide whether you are accredited or not. And if you are accredited, for how long you are accredited. Generally, it's 3 years, 5 years, not much more than 5 years, because things can change very much in 5 years. And you also have a difference between conditional or full accreditation. Full accreditation generally means that you fulfilled everything, you have the green light. Conditional accreditation is say, well, okay, you're not bad, but there are some points that you need to improve. So we will give you a conditional accreditation. In 2 years' time, you go back to us and you check that you progressed so that we can maintain the accreditation. But these are details, either you are accredited or not. Now, some fundamental aspects, it is a process, and all that I showed before is a process. And what is important is not only the result, but the process, the quality improvement process. An accreditation, at the difference of a certification, is not a compliance check. You have lots of criteria which are qualitative, so you have room for interpretation, you have room for presentation of your achievements, and so on and so on. Again, the goal is to stimulate the reflection. It's not to tick boxes, it is to stimulate the reflection and to check that from your side you did everything to ensure quality. Also, another very important thing, it's a continuous process, it's a long-term process. You don't have an accreditation in 2 weeks, in 2 months, it's impossible. It's a process that lasts at least 1.5 years, up to 2 years. Also, it's not a stop and go. Once you decided to go into accreditation, it's a very heavy process, very demanding process. You cannot decide to say, well, no, let's put it on the back burner, let's come back in 2 years. It's not the way it works. It's not consistent with this quality improvement objective of the accreditation. Also, extremely important, and we see it in many institutions, it's a collective process. It's not the pet project of the dean. It's not the goal, the personal opinion of the dean. It is something that must involve everybody in the institution. And then, well, it's a resource-consuming process. It needs time, it needs effort, and it needs money. Because if you want to improve, if you have to have more teachers, more research, more international students, whatever, well, all that needs some resources. And it means also that it is a very, very, very difficult process. If someone tells you, oh, accreditation is easy, my advice is do not go for this accreditation. An easy accreditation is a fraud. An easy accreditation is useless. Then keep your money and do something nice with your money. Also, when you go into the accreditation process, you must understand why and what is your objective. Is that visibility, is that benchmarking, is that improvement, is that a mix of everything, and then where do you start, what do you want to do? You need to understand the nature of the accreditation process and that it is a process and not just a result. You need to be realistic. First of all, because you need to be realistic about your level of quality. In many cases, in conferences, you have people and say, hey, you're EFMD? You say, yes. Do you make accreditation? Yes. Okay. And they say, we want your accreditation in 3 months' time, because in 3 months' time, we start a new program and we want to get it. And you say, well, it's just not possible. It's not consistent and so on. You need to be realistic. Also, another thing that we see all the time, and this is a kind of very funny because this is an international accreditation, you have people to say, well, you have to realize that these rules and these criteria, they simply do not apply in my country. You want some international professors, but in my country, well, we cannot hire international professors. So you need to change the criteria. And we say, no, we cannot change the criteria. It's just impossible. I mean, if you want to get for international accreditation, you need to accept international standards. So in some countries, unfortunately, due to their constraints and their specificity, it's not possible to get to international accreditation. But keep in mind that value of international accreditation is being benchmarked against international standards. So it's no use of saying, well, we want some specific standards for international accreditation. It simply doesn't work. Also, what you need to understand is that it's a mean and it's not an end. I mean, when you start going into accreditation, it means that it will last long. You don't say, well, okay, this is done and now I go to sleep and I will see that next time in 5 years. No, it's a continuous process. So it needs a long-term vision and a long-term engagement. And also, some advice, you need to act collectively inside the institution. It's not the guy from, it's not the dean who is doing that. It's not one individual. It's a collective, it's a team effort. You need to allocate necessary resources. You need to take support from your international partners, because many of your international partners, they already went through the accreditation, so you can share best practices, you can share advices, you can share experience. And also the last thing, and it comes from EFMD, you need to cooperate very closely with the accreditation body, and you need to understand that the accreditation body is here to help. It's here to mentor you. It's here to support you. It's not an examination. Again, it's a process. It's a joint journey towards excellence. And in this journey, you have not only your international partners, but also the accreditation agency, which is here to guide you. And these are important tips that I wanted to share with you. And now, to conclude this session, we will have time for, we'll have lots of time for the questions. What about international accreditation and internationalization? You need to be international to go for international accreditation, but an accreditation requests you to be international, so it's a bit of chicken and egg situation. Where do you start and where what comes first, and how to prepare best for international accreditation? First of all, as you were mentioning also in the chat, accreditation is a very powerful booster for internationalization, because it makes international partnerships much easier, because through the accreditation, you generate trust, and your potential partners will trust you. They will welcome you as a member of the club of top institution. It shows that you are sharing common values, common practices. It also gives you, we were mentioning it, higher visibility, higher recognition. You're an institution in the Philippines. People say, oh, I love the Philippines. I know where it is, but I don't really know your institution. If you have an international accreditation, already it means that you have achieved a certain level of quality, that you have a certain understanding of quality internationalization, and of course it opens doors to partnerships for the students, but also for the faculty, but also for the management. I mean, it brings trust, it brings visibility and image. Me as a student, obviously, if I'm looking for international education, I would give precedence to institutions which are accredited, obviously, because I know that in these institutions, my money, my tuition fees will be well invested. For At the reverse side, I mean, any accredited institution, it makes it much easier for it to recruit international faculty, to recruit international students, to engage into double degrees agreements, and so on and so on. And also, finally, and this is very important for the student, but also for the institution, I mean, if you have an international accreditation, it means that the diploma gets an increased value, which is important for the alumni, which is important for the international recognition of your institution. Now, the problem is that being international is often a prerequisite for international accreditation. So here we go into the chicken and egg situation that I was mentioning. But here I got some good news. Is that we have seen, and all the goal of this project is to demonstrate, is to illustrate that internationalization is not passport counting. The good news is that it's exactly the same for international accreditation. International accreditation is not passport counting, so you don't need to say, well, I got 10% of international students, is that enough for getting accredited or not? No, it is not the way it works. How it works is that the international accreditation will check internationalization of your institution as a multi-dimensional aspect. So they will look for internationalization in all the institutional or in all the program dimensions. It starts with a vision of your institution. Do you consider yourself as a national institution for the national market, or on the contrary, do you consider yourself as a regional institution, open to the region, open to the world? It looks at the governance. Do you have only national people into your governing board, or do you have international people? You look at the faculty, the number of people, foreign professors, professors who did national professors who did their studies in other countries, people who are cooperating pedagogically with other countries, the topics they are doing, the research they are doing, all that are tiny fragments of international, and they will be taken into account by the accrediting body. Same goes with research activity, same goes with the external links in your board. Do you have only national partners, or do you have international partners? Same goes with the alumni. Do you have only national alumni, or do your students go working elsewhere? Do they go there? Do they come back? And so on. All that are facets of internationalization, and as facets of internationalization, they will be checked by the accreditation agency. Also, and this is my concluding thoughts, and this is consistent with all what I discussed with you, accreditation is a process. So the accreditation agency will look at how much you progressed during the last years and what do you want to achieve. So they will look 5 years back and try to look 5 years in the future to decide whether you're progressing, whether your objectives are realistic, whether you are well positioned to increase your internationalization. So again, it's not one definition of internationalization, and certainly not just passport countings, percentage of foreign students or percentage of foreign faculties, and it's not a snapshot of your situation. An accreditation, international accreditation, is not looking at your position on this day, but looking at your progress and looking at your objectives and deciding whether, based on your progress on the field, in that case internationalization, you feel well prepared to reach your objective. And they check whether you are, according to standards, better than your competition, better make a benchmark to position yourself and to determine whether, yes or no, you deserve the accreditation. Whether yes or no, you can be qualified as an excellent institution, or on the contrary, you still need to work a little bit and to wait a little bit further before getting an accreditation. So we have reached the end of my presentation. Frankly speaking, I don't have any idea whether I have been too long, not too long. I intended to chronograph myself, but I lost my phone in the process. So in any case, I think we still have some time for questions, for discussions, and I am at your disposal for any exchange that you may need to have. I guess my presentation will be, as usual, it's recorded, and you will have the slides. You also have my contact, and we have been in contact for many times with many of you. So do not hesitate to ask any questions, to ask and send any comments, and I will be glad to receive them. Thank you very much for your attention.